Hey Dennis, how you doing today?
Fine, Chris. How about you?
Epic, epic as always, man. It is such an honor and privilege to have you on the show today, Dennis. Folks, I've gotten a chance to get to know Dennis over the last, geez, must be a couple of months now, and talking about somebody who lives in abundance, really has his finger on the pulse of how to get and enroll clients. That's the man you're looking at, Dennis Roberts. Dennis with one N, and I must admit, it's the over and under on me screwing up the lower thirds today is only going to be one, folks. So you can take the over, you can take the under. If I didn't screw them up at all, and if I didn't put two ends in, then it's a zero, and then you who took the under win. And if it's if I did screw up, maybe you get a push or you get the over. See, Dennis, we like to have a lot of fun with our guests and our audience. Our audience knows how many mistakes I can make, and at least you have an easy name to pronounce, so we can't do that. But we usually like to run a little over under, so to speak. It is kind of anyway. I digress way too much. Maybe we'll do maybe we'll bring you back on and we'll do an overrun on how many coaching clients people enroll by watching your episode. But anyway, enough about all of that. Dennis is joining us today from the UK. Another country heard from. I think I got to get a map and back. I mean, put little pins where we've got guests from. And as always, we're going to start off with Dennis's hero's journey. For those of you new to the show, the short version is we're going to hear how Dennis was a success at one point in his life in something. Something happened, that seminal moment, that turning point, and then it led him to be the success he is today. And you're going to want to sit down, take notes, and listen up because he's got a lot of great information. We're going to dig deep into it. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about it. So, Dennis, so I can shut up and take my one breath an hour. Why don't you go ahead and give our audience a brief overview of your hero's journey?
Hi, Chris. I guess where my hero's journey started was when I came close to the business collapsing. Having years and years of a relatively successful business, suddenly I found myself in a point which is, well, really, really scary without putting too fine a word on it. What preceded this is that I wanted to launch a new program and decided to hire a top marketer to do that. So having closed the previous program, I'd set up 3 months for the setup and launch of the new website in which to take a space, work on that, and not enroll any further clients. The setup phase, which was for 3 months, took 6 months at double the cost. The launch phase ran for 2 months without generating a single interview. So if you like, that was really, really what it was like, being up against the wall, thinking, gosh, I'm pretty long in the tooth, and where does this leave me? So I think, rock bottom, I think, describes it quite well, and it's a really useful place to be, because that's when you start to see genuine opportunities. So where things started to turn around for me is that during all this time, I was getting heavily involved in creativity and abundance coaching, which was very, very powerful in shifting from a negative to a positive mindset. And, there were 3 bits to that. One is engaging with the people and the community. Another was enrolling my own creativity and abundance coach. And finally, this paradigm, or if you like, new model, which has come out of it and has been really, really exciting, was all part of the turnaround.
Yeah, and then of course you got to of course you're in the aftermath, and you're now a success and teaching other people how you created that same success for yourself. So that's great, and I love the way it's interesting as I look around. I love the way you started off and you were successful, and you said, okay, I've been successful at this. At least it sounded to me anyway, that you were successful. You said, I've been successful at this. I want to do something else. And it sounded like you did your research and your planning, and it took a lot longer and was a lot more difficult to get to that something else, which is, I think, something we can all identify with. Things always take twice the amount of time and twice the amount of money if you're lucky. Um, and I, for people who've been on the, at rock bottom, you wouldn't call it luck, but just kind of it's always, we always underestimate for some reason. So anyway, let's dig deeper. Let's go back to the beginning and let's talk about that pre-turnaround phase. So give the folks a little bit of an idea where you were, what you were doing, and let's just kind of talk a little bit about what you were going through in the beginning phase before you just made that decision to switch gears.
Sure. I think that one of the fundamental issues was what was different about the new program is that I wanted to, we work one-on-one, but I wanted to integrate a marketing element. So I teamed up with this top marketer, so there was quite a strong relationship there. And as the marketing wasn't working for me, it was clear there was going to be no basis for them to deliver it to our clients. So it was really, really at a fundamental level that I needed to get to grips with why is there such a bad fit between marketing and coaching. So that was an important part of the journey.
So you said there wasn't a good fit between marketing and coaching in the beginning phases. When you were successful, did you have or did you see a good fit at that point between marketing and coaching? Now this is before you went in this new direction. So when you were successful before the first time, before the turnaround, did you see a good fit between marketing and coaching at that point?
Well, I think I was responding to the issue that some coaches have problems in enrollment. And so to beef up the program, I wanted to bring in that particular marketing expertise as part of the program. The problem is the more that I got into it and the more that I discovered it wasn't working for me, the more I realized that the program was flawed. So the program was based on an idea. That idea was initially tested on me and with disastrous consequences. So like everything went out of the window.
Yeah, that's never, it's never good. They always say it's, people don't like to be first to a party and people never like to be guinea pigs. I mean, part of my background is in IT and I know there is something to be said for being an alpha tester or a beta tester, but they'll even tell you, if you install a brand new piece of software, don't do it on, on your PC, if it's in beta because it could make everything, go down the tubes real quick. Kind of like when Windows 10 just came out, the manufacturer of my laptop said, you know what, you might not want to install it because you're going to blue screen to death. And I went, well, that's a good reason not to install something brand new to make to make one of the things I use for the control room go away. So it's interesting. What I heard there was you were talking about the program, and it sounds to me. And let me ask you a question. In the beginning phase, can you give us a quick background on what you were successful doing there in the beginning phase?
What I was really successful with was a number of areas of development for the coach. My company specializes in working with coaches only, and it takes an integrated approach to personal development, and so that they're all independents, they all own their businesses. So it takes an integrated approach to personal development, to leadership development, to organizational development, and to continuing professional development. So all those elements are in there. And somewhere within that mix, the bit which probably was most challenging and outside of my core expertise was the lead generation part. So that's why I wanted to bring that in. But the major lesson that came out of this for me, I mean, I'm sure that you probably do things through sort of lean startup and you pivot and you really test the market properly. My biggest mistake was to have an idea, to think that idea would work, and without testing it first. And in a sense, part of the process was testing the idea and the discovery that the idea wasn't a good one, and what that highlighted was where all the disconnects were.
Yeah, there's something to be said for fail fast, and there's something to be said for, getting a minimum viable product or a minimum viable service out there to market. Um, and there's something else to be said for doing maybe a little bit more research. It's like you have to get, if you, as a coach, if you want to do a new program, you have to do some test marketing. You just have to. You have to see if it's going to work. You have to see if anybody resonates. But I coach people all the time, and I tell them, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, Chris, can we just go out and create our full program? And it's like, no, don't create your program yet. And they're like, wait a minute, we want to sell it. It's like, okay, do you know if anybody is going to buy it? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then why would you spend the hours, the countless hours creating a full program if you have no clue if it's going to serve any, niche, or if it's going to serve anybody's needs, wants, desires, and if they're going to pay you for it. And we can talk about that later, but I want to get back to the beginning for a second, because what I think I heard was something very interesting. You were successful in the coaching business and in the coaching industry. You realized there was a deficiency, a shortcoming. And the funniest thing, Dennis, is I think you said deficiency. If not, that's what I heard. And the reason I picked up on that, and I love that, is because too many times people in our industry are afraid to talk about pitfalls and are afraid to talk about deficiencies and are afraid to talk about failures. And I believe if we just change our opinion of those words, it's going to make for a much better, much open, much happier person, because you realize that you aren't deficient. The process was deficient, or there were some deficiencies in the company. You weren't a failure. A process failed. So anyway, it sounded like you said you found a deficiency, and that was in marketing, and you went out and sought the expertise of somebody to bring in. Did I hear that correctly?
You did hear it correctly, but two problems. On my side, the bit which I've talked about, which is having an idea and wanting to just put that into practice without properly testing the idea. And then the other was discovering the degree to which there was a mismatch in the idea in the first place.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. You said a mismatch in the idea. So you're saying that you had an idea, you thought something would work, and I should say, where was that mismatch? And what do you mean by a mismatch?
The mismatch is between traditional marketing and sales and the way in which coaches market and enroll clients. So the fundamental mismatch was that any front-end marketing and enrollment needs to take place through coaching practice. It's the only thing which is aligned with coaching practice, which traditional sales and marketing isn't. So the key learning that came out of this was how to teach marketing and enrollment that was coaching based, furthermore that was based on abundance coaching. So it shifted from a negative and sort of scarcity model into a creativity and abundance one.
Yeah, and creativity and abundance is such a great place to be. It's a scary place to be sometimes for some people. Yeah, I know it sounds weird. You would think scarcity would be scarier, but that's a topic for a whole nother conversation, because this is really good right now, because we're leading into the turning point. And when it comes to the turning point, it sounds like it wasn't one seminal moment. It sounds like it was just things that happened along the way that led you down to a point where you realized something had to change. If you can remember back, can you remember what the first inkling you had was that maybe this wasn't a good match, and maybe there was something off or something different or something, I don't want to say wrong because it really wasn't wrong, but something off, and there was a mismatch?
Okay, the other thing that I should add into the picture is that the person that I hired had formerly been one of my coaching clients. So there was that dimension to the relationship as well, which did have its downside, because I probably, when there was slippage on time and what have you, I wasn't as hard on it. What I should say in their favor is that I'm a perfectionist. And so part of the reason that the setup and of the website, and that phase took so long, is the degree to which it didn't feel right and we were trying to get there. What I've learned with hindsight is that we'd never get there because the fundamental differences are so major, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, and I'm laughing, folks. Through setting up the show, I can vouch for Dennis. He's a perfectionist, and that's a good thing. And the reason I say it's a good thing is because when you work with him and his company, it means they're going to take the time to make sure everything is right. Perfectionism gets a bad rep sometimes for people who know they're perfectionists and can identify it and understand it. It can be such a powerful force. It's the people who don't want to admit they're perfectionists that you've got to watch out for. Anyway, I get off my soapbox. I digress. So, part of what you started to find out, or part of what you figured out in this turnaround period and in the aftermath, and we'll talk about the aftermath in a couple of minutes, but part of what you figured out about this turnaround period was that you took responsibility. Can I ask you a very personal question about that? When you took responsibility, that it was that part of it was lied on your shoulders for being a perfectionist. May I ask you a personal question on that?
Absolutely.
How did it feel when you took that responsibility? Did it feel good? Did it feel bad? Did it feel freeing? Do you remember how it felt when you took that responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, that responsibility occurred when I encountered the work of Wallace D. Wattles. So it wasn't just something that involved me, it's something that involved a very powerful connection. And actually, it was the powerful connection that was energizing, that, underpinned taking the responsibility, which in turn felt really, really good. Because obviously, as things were sliding downhill, my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to turn the situation around.
Yeah,
And slipping further and further into negativity on the one hand, on the other hand, getting more and more deeply immersed in abundance.
Yeah. Now, here's another question for you. Do you think you'd have ever been able to turn it around if you didn't take responsibility for at least the piece of the issue and the challenge that was yours?
The answer to that is no. And what I'm trying to do in this interview is saying that, okay, although there was a mismatch, I'm also trying to take responsibility for the elements of that mismatch that were down to me.
Well, and I bring that up because for those of you watching at home or listening, maybe you've record this and listen to your car or something. What Dennis said right there is worth gold, because until you take responsibility for the pieces of a situation that are yours, not for the whole thing. You don't have to. You're not a martyr. You're not putting you're not Atlas with the world, and you're not the martyr with the oh geez, I need to go work out, man. It's not good, Dennis, to do this if you got no muscle. So that my pool of eligible women just shrunk because I'm single. But that's besides the point. Who knows? Maybe by the time this airs, I won't be. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that you don't have to take responsibility for everything. Just take responsibility for what you're responsible for. And it's such a freeing experience and such a freeing thing. So you mentioned Wallace D. Wattles and epic. I mean, it's kind of a epic author, and I almost can't even talk. I got to get back to a question here. So during this turnaround period, you started to take responsibility, and you started to realize that things might be mismatched. But one of the other things I heard you say was you used a previous client as now a partner or a resource. Do you think you had any blinders on because they were a previous client, and maybe looked past some of the warning signs that this was out of sync?
Yes, it was a more difficult relationship. It was a more complex relationship. The roles had switched. Obviously, I had mixed feelings about being too demanding. It would have been a much cleaner relationship if I'd chosen someone completely different. It still wouldn't have changed all the fundamental mismatches between sales and marketing, but at a personal level, obviously, that was the key part of the situation. And, it was messy, and it did impact on our relationship. And obviously part of the real challenge was to um, resolve the situation and come out of it in a way that to at least to some extent preserve the relationship, but unfortunately there has been some cost to the relationship.
Yeah, and the interesting part, and the reason I ask that question, and the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times when we use people close to us, or we use ex-clients as providers, we need to be overly cautious and overly careful of not letting things completely go that are going to damage what we're trying to do. And we tend to do that because they're friends of ours, because we don't want to hurt them. We don't want to see them feel bad, especially living in an abundance mindset and living in a positive mindset. You want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, right, Dennis?
Sure, and I think that it's how can I put it? It's not take it out of any kind of blame frame. Nobody was at blame. It was nobody's fault. It was just a learning journey. What then becomes the issue is how you manage yourself in that learning journey, how you manage your responsibilities. And part of managing responsibilities as well is letting go of control, which I think is really key. So it's a delicate balance between being responsible and not trying to control the situation.
Yeah, epic. Once again, another piece of gold right there. Accepting responsibility, but not feeling like you have to be in complete control. And this really leads us into the next part, which is the aftermath. So when it comes to the aftermath, you started to realize there was this mismatch, and unfortunately, the person, and I'll say unfortunately because it created another layer. You had an ex-client, so there was a bigger challenge. Um, when you Once you hit that rock bottom and you started on the upslope, do you remember what either the first or one of your early actions did after you hit rock bottom to start coming back on the upswing?
Yeah, I mean, my first is to obviously I stopped the marketing budget, reached a point where it was pointless pouring money down the drain. The cost of that was that I lost my website as well because it was on a platform that couldn't be shifted to my own hosting company. So the complete investment was, I cut my entire losses, but I still had a budget, and I used that budget to hire an abundance coach. And that was a key turning point, because I think it's so important, not just with abundance, but with coaching in general, to have that relationship in place. Because the other aspect that one experiences when things go down the tube is the degree of isolation, fear, cut-offness. All of those things really amplify. So it's very, very important time to have a coach.
Yeah, wow, another golden nugget, folks. I mean, Dennis is just giving you epic value today, and I don't mean just in a bad way, but he's bringing it today. Dennis is bringing it. And it's like kind of the rock, just bring it. But it's epic, Dennis. And the interesting thing about what you just said is it's so counterintuitive. People would say, I have a marketing budget. I no longer have a website. I need to spend the rest of my money on getting a website back up, because if I don't have a website, nobody's going to find me. You took exactly the opposite approach and said, look, there's something else going on here that I need to change, and all the pretty websites in the world aren't going to help, which is kind of bad, because one of the companies I own does is websites. So, but I'm a coach too, so we'll figure all that out. But no, the whole point is that most people would go for the pretty website first. You took the other route and went for the coaching. I congratulate you on it. Was there a thought process behind choosing the abundance coach versus doing more marketing and doing the website?
I think what's at the core of this is comparing the difference between the scarcity model on which traditional sales and marketing is built and an abundance model. So on the scarcity model, there's the whole competitive element, competing on price, et cetera, et cetera. But there's another part of it which is very, very undermining. And coaches are from Mars and marketers are from Pluto. Um, and the impact of that is that many marketers, directly or indirectly, convince coaches that they don't have the words to convey their message, that the marketers do, so let the marketers speak for you. Now, what's absolutely critical about a coaching relationship is it's 100% authentic relationship between two individuals.
Yeah.
The only way of speaking is through your true voice. When you hire a marketer with fancy scripts, with enticements, with all these sorts of things, they're actually superimposing their voice on you. So that has a double effect. One, it means that you don't discover the empowerment of speaking through your own voice. But two, you lose self-confidence, you lose self-belief, you move increasingly into a negative mindset. And hey, guess what? The marketing doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it compounds the issue. So, it really is quite a fundamental one, that.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm laughing so hard because now at least you've explained one of the challenges I previously experienced when talking about, doing marketing and everything. Of course, I've got VideoContent.Agency, VideoContent.Marketing, got a lot of stuff. And we used to talk a lot about video content marketing, and we couldn't get at the beginning, we couldn't get the point through, and now I know why. When people heard marketing and marketer, and coaches especially, they thought what we were going to do is tell them what to say. And the way we built this company and what we do with all our clients is we give them an outline of how to put their thoughts on paper and then get it out. And we tell every client that they really have the voice inside of them. They know what their ideal client wants to hear the best, not us, so they should use that. Now, do we help tweak it a little bit? Sure. We help give, maybe a little bit more powerful language here and there, but we don't impose our will and we don't do anything. So, man, Dennis, I am epically psyched right now because, you just explained explain something that's been on my mind for a long time. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so can I just respond with a bit of feedback?
Sure.
Where you're different from traditional marketing is you're communicating with the coach in their true voice and through your true voice in conversation. Mm-hmm. So the shift is from presentation to conversation, and that is absolutely critical. It's what you stand for, and it's what sets you apart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Geez, folks, I should just wrap up the interview now. Dennis is giving you some great nuggets. He just gave me an epic compliment. I'm not sure where we go from here, but we still have another half hour. Plus, we've got to get into the expert focus. So let's slowly but surely kind of wind this all together and spend a little bit more time on the aftermath before we get there. I know you talked in the aftermath. I mean, you're a success now, and we're going to hear all about that success when we get to the expert focus segment and about how you can show people the 3 things they need to directly enroll clients abundantly. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the other questions, I know there was some challenges. Is there any other challenge during the aftermath that sticks in your mind that you had to overcome to become the success that you are today?
I think the biggest challenge is handling negativity. We all slip into negative mindsets, and it's really crucial that we have ways of making that shift. I'm the kind of person who spent their life in a doubt culture, so all my education has actually been directed towards becoming a skeptic. So actually, it's quite a major shift for me to shift from negative, critical mindset into a positive and abundant one. So at an immediately personal level, that involved me with certain meditation practices, getting into various spiritual fields, in addition to my business coach. I also have a spiritual guide who has developed very advanced meditation techniques, so who's introducing me more and more into that space. Since then, we've also formed a group called Group Blogging for Abundance with Friends. So there were 3 of us who were in that space. And again, blogs are conversational. So that's been very exciting. And they're very highly tuned people. So the community element is really, really important because of the isolation element. And in isolation, we're more likely to move into a negative space. Being out there and being in a community with fellow positive people is a very important part.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know that, I know I went through my own challenges, and I remember that isolation. I remember days when I would just pick up my foot off the couch, put it on the floor, and that would be the only cheer I would have, and I wouldn't talk to another human being for days or weeks at a time. This happened to be when I went through my divorce and everything else, so I can personally vouch for the fact of how nasty and terrible isolation is. If you're watching this episode right now, obviously in this moment you're not in isolation, but I invite you to think about your life as a whole and see if you spend any time in isolation that's unwanted. And what I mean by, sometimes we do just want to get away from people and we want to be by ourselves. But if you find yourself in that scenario when it's unwanted, even if there's no other reason to contact Dennis, which we'll give you away later, reach out and talk to Dennis, because he obviously knows a lot about, how to come out of isolation. At least start to have a conversation with him, around that, and start to get connected to this guy. So we're gonna wrap up the hero's journey piece of today's show. You've heard how Dennis had a successful coaching business, decided that something else, something more was needed. It almost turned into a big tragedy, at least from a business standpoint. And what's come out of it is another beautifully successful, abundant business on the other side. We're going to take about a 60-second break. Stick around, and we'll be right back. And for those Toastmasters, you can stop counting my ums and ahs, because this is kind of live. At least it's recorded before a studio audience, and I like to say We'll be right back.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now. You'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.